Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's speaking English confidently. We've got some really cool material to work from by a communication coach named Lisa Carter, and she really helps people overcome those language hurdles.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of fascinating to me how many people are held back not by their vocabulary, but by that fear factor of making mistakes when they speak.
Yeah, that's true. Lisa Carter, she really emphasizes this whole idea of confidence
Right.
being the real key to fluency,
Mm-hmm.
not just, knowing all the grammar rules.
Right.
What I think is really interesting is that she kind of frames it almost like you're training for a marathon.
Oh, okay.
You wouldn't just go out and try to run 26 miles
Yeah.
without, slowly building up to it.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing with speaking confidently.
Right.
It's a skill that you develop through consistent
Let's
practice.
say.
It's about building those neural pathways for fluency.
That's such a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Instead of getting, bogged down by every little mistake, it's about recognizing that every attempt you make, even if it's awkward at first, is part of that training process.
Exactly. Lisa Carter, she really flips the script on how we view mistakes.
Okay.
Instead of seeing them as failures, she wants us to kind of reframe them as feedback.
Okay.
So each stumble is actually an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to adjust and refine and improve.
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice, though?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say, don't be afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah.
But actually, putting yourself out there, especially when you're speaking out loud, can be terrifying.
I get that. I think it's that kind of initial cringe factor that a lot of people get held back by.
Yeah, for sure.
Lisa Carter, she has this great tip called shadowing
Okay.
that can be really helpful, especially if you're someone who's practicing by yourself. Have you ever tried that?
Shadowing. I'm not familiar with that technique. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Basically, you choose audio from a native English speaker.
Okay.
So it could be a podcast, a
Mhm.
TED Talk, even like a scene from a movie.
Okay.
And you basically try to mimic their pronunciation and intonation as closely as possible.
Mm.
It's almost like you're their shadow.
Oh, okay.
You're speaking right alongside them.
That sounds like it would be really helpful for mimicking sounds.
Yeah.
But I guess I wonder if there's a risk that you could just be copying without really understanding.
Mhm.
Could it become more about performance than actual communication?
Yeah, that's a great point. Lisa Carter actually addresses that.
Okay.
She emphasizes that shadowing, it shouldn't be mindless repetition.
Right.
It's about actively listening,
Mm.
paying attention to the nuances of how words are stressed, the rhythm of the sentences,
Okay.
even like the subtle pauses.
So it's about training your ear as much as your mouth. I could see how that would help you develop a more intuitive sense of the language.
Yeah, precisely. What I think is so cool about shadowing is that it engages multiple areas of your brain
Oh, wow.
all at the same time. So you're working your auditory processing, you're using your motor skills. You even have those mirror neurons firing,
Okay.
which are those neurons that fire when we observe others' actions.
Right, right.
So essentially, you're kind of accelerating the language acquisition process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like it would be a lot more engaging
Oh, yeah,
than, just drilling vocabulary lists.
definitely.
But Lisa Carter also emphasizes the importance of making a mental shift.
Right.
It's not just about sounding like a native speaker, it's about thinking in English.
Absolutely. And that's where I think it gets really interesting. She suggests this technique.
Okay.
She calls it the inner monologue.
Okay.
So basically what you're doing is narrating your day,
Mhm.
your thoughts, even just your arguments with yourself,
Oh, wow.
all in English.
So it's about creating this constant immersion,
Yeah.
even when you're not actively speaking to someone.
All right.
I can see how that would help you solidify those neural pathways that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It's like building that English muscle in your brain.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is that this principle, it's not just for English.
Right.
This applies to learning any language.
Oh, okay.
Linguistically, we tend to learn and remember in chunks, in phrases, in patterns,
Okay.
rather than just individual words.
So instead of translating word by word in our heads, it's about learning the building blocks of conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm.
So for example, instead of just learning the word delicious,
Okay.
you try practicing phrases like, this tastes delicious,
Right.
or that smells delicious.
Oh, okay.
It helps your brain to internalize those natural patterns of speech.
That's a helpful tip.
Yeah.
But what about when you do have to have an actual conversation, especially with a native speaker? I know a lot of people get kind of hung up on feeling like their vocabulary isn't big enough.
That's a really common concern.
Yeah.
And Lisa Carter, she has some great advice for that.
Okay.
She really emphasizes the importance of learning phrases rather than just isolated words.
Why is learning phrases so much more effective than just memorizing individual words?
Well, I mean, think about it. When we speak naturally,
Yeah.
we don't just string together single words.
Right.
We use phrases and expressions that flow together.
Right.
It creates that more natural rhythm. It's like the difference between saying food, good, and saying, wow, this meal is absolutely delicious.
Oh, yeah. That's a much better example, yeah. It sounds a lot more natural and a lot more expressive. But even with all of this practice, you get those nerves.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're about to speak in front of other people.
Yeah.
Does Lisa Carter offer any strategies for dealing with that? That kind of like pre-speech anxiety?
She does. She acknowledges that, nervousness is totally normal,
Oh, good.
even for, experienced speakers.
Right.
And she recommends some, simple but powerful deep breathing exercises to help calm those jitters.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those deep breathing techniques.
Yeah.
Especially before like presentations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It really helps shift your mindset.
It's amazing how such a simple thing can really, help regulate your nervous system.
Yeah.
Those slow, deep breaths can really help to slow down your heart rate, ease those anxious feelings. But she also emphasizes that preparation is key.
Okay.
The more you practice those common scenarios like introductions or, asking for directions, the more confident you'll feel when you actually encounter those situations in real life.
So it's about building that mental muscle memory.
Exactly.
Not just the physical aspects of speaking.
But preparation doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming thing.
Right.
It can be as simple as rehearsing a few key phrases in your head.
Oh.
Or just jotting down, a couple of conversation starters in a notebook or something.
Those little things can make a big difference.
Totally.
But what about those times when you don't have a speaking partner?
Yeah.
Or you don't have access to language classes?
Mm-hmm.
What are some creative ways that Lisa Carter suggests for practicing solo?
Well, she's a big advocate for exploring online resources.
Okay.
Things like language exchange apps or, those virtual groups where you can actually connect with other learners.
Oh, wow.
From all over the world.
Yeah.
Who are also trying to improve their English.
It's like a global network of study buddies.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And if you're feeling really brave, she even suggests recording yourself speaking.
Oh, I remember when I first tried recording my voice for a project. It was so weird. I was like, is that what I sound like?
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
But listening back to those recordings, it can be really helpful. It allows you to identify those areas where you might be stumbling or mispronouncing words.
Okay.
It's kind of like having your own personal language coach giving you feedback.
And it helps you get over that fear of hearing your own voice.
Right.
Which I think is a big confidence boost in itself.
Totally. And speaking of confidence, I think her final takeaway is so important.
Okay.
She reminds us that confidence, it's not about achieving this kind of unrealistic perfection.
Right.
It's about recognizing and celebrating the progress that you're making along the way.
That takes the pressure off.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about focusing on those small wins. So, ordering a coffee with ease.
Yeah.
Having a brief conversation with a stranger.
Yeah.
Being able to, express your opinion in a meeting or something.
Yeah.
Every step forward, no matter how small it is, it's still contributing to your growth.
It's like that saying, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly. And just like building Rome, building confidence in speaking English.
Right.
It's this ongoing journey. It's a process of continuous learning and improvement. And remember those mistakes that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
They're just part of that construction process.
I love that analogy. They're like the bricks that pave the path to fluency.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And it's a journey worth taking.
Yeah.
Because when you can communicate confidently in English, it opens up so many possibilities.
It really does, yeah. It's like unlocking a superpower.
Yeah.
It allows you to connect with people from different cultures, explore new ideas.
Yeah.
You can even advance your career in ways that you might not have imagined before.
Absolutely. And, going back to her point about fear of judgment being such a common obstacle, it makes you wonder, how can we all contribute to creating a more supportive and encouraging environment?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And I think it starts with each of us, right?
Yeah.
Being patient with ourselves, recognizing our own progress. And then extending that same understanding to others who are learning English as well.
Exactly. We've all been beginners at something.
Yeah.
And we know how daunting it can feel to put ourselves out there,
Right.
especially when it comes to language.
Instead of criticizing or correcting every little mistake,
Yeah,
what if we focused on just encouraging and celebrating those successes?
I love that reframing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about shifting from a place of judgment
Yeah,
to a place of encouragement.
exactly. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just listen
Yeah,
with patience and empathy.
right.
You know, we've all been there, fumbling for the words,
Yeah.
feeling that self-consciousness,
Right.
and just offering a kind smile or a nod of encouragement
Mm-hmm.
can make all the difference in helping someone feel seen and supported.
It's about creating those safe spaces
Yeah.
where people feel comfortable taking risks and trying out new phrases,
Yeah.
stretching their language muscles without the fear of being ridiculed.
It's about encouraging a growth mindset,
Exactly.
not just in ourselves,
Yeah.
but in our communities as well.
And, it goes beyond just individual interactions. It's about fostering a culture of learning
Mm-hmm.
where mistakes are seen as valuable feedback, not as failures.
That's such a powerful message. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah.
For people who are on their own journeys to speaking English with more confidence?
Just remember that building confidence is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's about embracing that journey, celebrating those small wins, and never losing sight of that incredible power of communication.
That is beautifully said. To all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those conversations flowing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. This has been such a cool deep dive into, the world of speaking English with confidence.
Yeah.
I'm so struck by Lisa Carter's approach, how she blends those practical techniques with a real understanding of the mental and emotional aspects.
It's so refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's a really good reminder that we all have the capacity to become more confident speakers.
Yeah.
It's not, some innate talent that you're born with.
Right.
It's something that we can all cultivate through, consistent effort and the right mindset.
It makes me think about that final point that we were discussing.
Yeah.
About creating a more supportive environment for language learners.
Yeah.
It's something that she touches on in the material, but I think it's worth exploring a little bit further.
Okay.
If fear of judgment is such a common obstacle, what are some ways that we can help each other overcome that?
That's a really crucial question, and I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing that everyone learns at their own pace
Mm-hmm.
and that making mistakes is a totally normal and necessary part of the process.
Yeah.
So instead of, cringing or kind of recoiling when somebody stumbles over a word, what if we just chose to celebrate their courage?
Yeah.
Celebrate the fact that they were brave enough to even speak up in the first place.
I love that. It's like shifting from a place of judgment to a place of encouragement.
Exactly. And, sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just listen patiently
Yeah.
with empathy. We've all been there,
Yeah, for sure.
fumbling for the words, feeling self-conscious,
Yeah.
just offering a kind smile, a nod of encouragement
Right.
can make all the difference
Yeah.
in helping someone feel seen and supported.
It's about creating those safe spaces where people feel comfortable taking risks,
Exactly.
trying out new phrases,
Yeah.
stretching those language muscles without being afraid of, being ridiculed.
And it goes beyond individual interactions, too.
Yeah.
It's about really fostering this culture of learning
Yeah.
where mistakes are seen as valuable feedback,
Yeah.
not as failures.
So it's about encouraging a growth mindset.
Exactly.
Not just in ourselves,
Yeah.
but in, our communities as well.
Mm-hmm.
What a powerful message.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
I would just say, remember that building confidence is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey,
Mm.
celebrating those small wins,
Mm-hmm.
and never losing sight of the incredible power of communication.
That is so well said. And to all of our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those conversations flowing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.